Okay, so continuing on with our hip stuff then, I get lots and lots of questions or stuff about piriformis or this sort of area in hip causing problems, contributing sometimes to a little bit of sciatica as well. So your piriformis muscle, not that it really matters, just stuff, right? Just stuff in your hip. So this stretch that I'm going to show you is for the piriformis muscle, but you can't say that you're kind of stretching one muscle because there's so much other stuff in there, and it's why I'm, not a massive fan of this idea of singling things out. That being said, the piriformis muscle gets involved in sciatica because the sciatic nerve runs. In some people it runs underneath the muscle, in some people it runs over it, some people it weaves through it, and depending on where it goes, some people's piriformis, if it gets tight, for want of a better way of putting it, tight, unable to yield is probably a better way of saying it, it can cause sort of that pins and needly feeling, shooting pains down the leg and all the rest of it. So it's sometimes your glute can be involved in that. This stretch that I'm going to do gets into all of this stuff, right? So rather than thinking about it as one muscle, let's think about it more as a stretch or a mobilization for all this stuff back here. So if you've got an issue with stuff going on, then this is where it's at. So I see this, this is performed, it's a figure 4 stretch. I see it on the floor a lot with people reaching through, grabbing the leg and, lying on the back and yanking on the legs. I like it in seated because you can be a little bit more honest about what you're actually doing. So, we were working on that hip assessment the other day, and you're working out what ranges of movement you've got and what you haven't. And this is another way of, instead of just kind of getting hold of your leg, pulling it over and then sitting and trying to find this stretch or sensation down the back, it's sometimes useful to use the getting in, the journey from getting from where you are to where you want to be as part of the movement, right? So if I was to say, I want to get into this position where my right ankle bone is on the outside of my left thigh, and I want this knee out to the side, right? And so what do you do to get there? So most people will do this. They'll look at the legs, they'll pick one leg up and they'll realise it's going nowhere near. So they'll bring this other leg across, and then they'll get hold of their ankle and pull it up their thigh and place it in position, right? So instead of doing that, or the other thing you'll do as well is this. So you'll lean back to get the leg up. So notice what you do to get your leg up is basically what I'm saying, right? So my cheats are, I need to lean back a little bit. My leg doesn't want to come across, so I'm really having to kind of lean back. And to get it there, I'm having to cheat a little bit by bringing the other leg across. So they're my cheats. Once I get there, I can then sort of sit up and find the stretch, right? So same on the other side. What do you do to get there? If you have a look, I can get my leg up without having to compensate. That's okay. That bit, I can do that bit, but it's still not quite enough to get my ankle over my knee, more or less, but I'm having to bring the other knee in. So I'm a little bit better on this side, don't have to lean as much. So just pay attention to how you get there, essentially, so you can work out what ranges of movement you actually are missing, as the case may be. So anyway, at some point you've got to do the stretch, so I'm going to do it this side first. So I'm going to bring my ankle a little bit further up my knee. You can use the other arm to press down into that knee, but for most of us getting into this position, you might feel a stretch, you might not, right? But you don't want to be pulling your opposite leg over. So I'm going to try and keep this leg, the non-stretchy leg if you like, in line with my hip. And then from there, the thing that most people will do, they'll sit like this, right? So I don't know if you can see there, but I'm actually tucked under somewhat. I'll try and bring my butt into the wide bit. So I have no curve in my lower back, right? So for me, I could lean forward and make this look impressive. Well, it doesn't look that impressive really, does it? But you get the idea. So I could lean forward. But if I'm being completely honest, or wanting to get into the stretch, I'm going to have to stick my tailbone out. So you know my wonderful key phrase that I love to, if in doubt, stick your ass out. So there I am, sticking my ass out, and I'm hoping you can see now I've got some curve to my lower back. Again, I'm going to try and get on the white bit so you can see. There you go. So instead of being here, with a flat back, I'm actively rolling my pelvis forward. And as I do that, you'll feel a stretch come on into, or you might feel a deeper stretch. Then when I hinge forward, I'm trying to take my belly button up and over my leg, rather than just collapsing in my spine. So if you can, lift your belly button up and hinge forward. You're going to get a much deeper stretch into that side of your hip. And it's kind of, when I do this right, this is not a good thing, right? It's not like you're supposed to get pins and needles. But when I do this right, because I've got such a deep stretch, it's obviously having some kind of impact on the nerve, because I get a little bit of pins and needles into my foot. So I'm going to back off there, and I'm going to make it a softer stretch. So I'm not going to hinge quite as far forward, because I'm not after a nerve stretch, I'm after a muscle stretch. And then you repeat on the other side. So same thing, you work out how you're going to get there, what cheats you need to do. But you're always, if you're getting into position using your own muscle power, you're building strength to get into that position rather than just passively hoiking your legs about. Same thing here. I'm going to try and find that lower back arch, and then I'm going to hinge forward by lifting my belly button up and taking my belly button and chest forward rather than collapsing everything down. So I hope you can kind of see that I'm rolling my pelvis. So there's my pelvis rolling under me, tucking under, and then I'm trying to roll my pelvis forward, hinging forward. So that's the stretch. So I like stuff that you can do pretty much anywhere. You can do that one kind of sitting down, sofa, dinner table, etc. You can do it standing as well. So you'll see when I do it standing, I have a lot more, weirdly, ability. Not weirdly really, it's a different position. So I can get into position without having to compensate as much. Nothing kind of changes. If I was to block this hip out, yeah, you can see what I'm doing there. I'm kind of leaning that way to get my leg over. If I was to keep this up, oh, now I struggle a little bit, so I'm kind of collapsing, which is the equivalent of bringing this leg over. But anyway, you get the idea. So I'm there. So there's your figure 4 stretching standing. I turn sideways on you, but see again. So now I'm going to sit back and down like I'm sitting in a chair. I'm just using this for balance. You can use it with or without. But this, you don't want to be, if you want to find standing leg, and cat's diving about in boxes here. I don't want to be shifting my knee forward over my toes. I want to keep my knee back and focus more on sitting down with a vertical shin. And again, same here, if you can see my bottom, I'm not rounding my spine. I'm actively trying to create that curve in my lower back. So you do it here as well. Both good options you can practice. If your balance is okay, you can have a go at sinking into it. She says if the balance is okay, you can have a go at sinking into it and using it as a balance exercise as well. So you can be here. It's all about, for you to get that stretch, it's all about being able to lift your tailbone up. So instead of being rounded here, I'm lifting my tailbone. And as soon as you do that, you'll feel the work more in the standing glute. So you've got 3 options. You've got the sitting version, you've got the standing with some balance version, or without balance because you're holding a chair, and then you've got the balanced version. Have a play with those and let me know how you get on. Brilliant for your hips.